Hi, everyone. We're on Patreon. Find the link in the show notes. Show off your love for being curious with the official Info on the Go merch.
Whether you're sipping your coffee from our sleek mug, staying warm in one of our cozy hoodies, or rocking that fun fact inspired t shirt, or just carrying one of your essentials in our reusable tote bag, you'll be repping curiosity and style everywhere you go.
Each item is designed with our curious, on the go community in mind, and every purchase helps support the show. Wear it, sip it, carry it. Info on the Go is more than a podcast, it's a way of life.
Patreon, find the link in the show notes. Hi, I'm William,
And I'm Kat.
and this is a dash of info.
Little things you want to know.
Memorial Day on this dash.
Memorial Day is a U.S. federal holiday dedicated to honoring and remembering the military personnel who have died while serving in the United States Armed Forces.
It is observed on the last Monday of May each year, providing a long weekend for Americans to reflect on the sacrifices made by those who died in service for their country.
The holiday's origins can be traced back to the aftermath of the Civil War, when communities began holding ceremonies to decorate the graves of fallen soldiers with flowers and flags.
The American Civil War was one of the most devastating conflicts in American history. It resulted in an estimated 620,000 to 750 deaths, a staggering toll for a nation at the time. That is that is a
It
lot.
that is a lot. I mean, and it's even crazier because it wasn't just, us fighting somebody else. It was us fighting each other, brother versus brother, father versus son, stuff like that. It was
And for the amount of
awful.
loss of life, this could be devastating for communities, families.
Whole
Like,
families torn apart by each other, it's wild. This unprecedented loss of life, particularly among soldiers, led to a national need to honor and memorialize the fallen.
the sheer number of dead combined with the emotional impact of the war spurred efforts to establish dedicated places of rest and tribute for those who had given their lives.
And as a result, national cemeteries were established after the war to properly inter the fallen soldiers, providing a place for families, communities, and the nation to grieve and remember.
In the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, many communities across northern and southern United States began holding local ceremonies to honor the soldiers who had died. And a lot of these were going to be mass graves too, because there was just so many casualties.
That, and they didn't really have a good way of identifying people back in the day.
No. Mm.
Not at all. Have you been to is it Oakland Cemetery in Atlanta?
I haven't been to Oakland, but I've been to Arlington and I've been to Andersonville.
Okay, I haven't been to those two, but I've been to the one in Atlanta, and it's insane how big it is.
You should really go to Andersonville.
I'll have to check it out for
Yeah.
sure. These observances often took the form of graveside tributes, where families, friends, and neighbors would gather in the spring to decorate the graves of fallen soldiers with flowers, flags, and other emblems of respect.
These early decoration ceremonies were heartfelt, grassroots events that demonstrated a collective desire to remember and honor those who had sacrificed their lives for the Union or the Confederacy.
The practice of decorating graves was widespread and occurred not only in military cemeteries, but also in local churchyards and town cemeteries, as many soldiers had been buried in areas far from their homes.
Communities often led by women organized these events, which became significant annual rituals that allowed local residents to pay tribute to the fallen while also fostering a sense of national unity during a time of profound grief and division. Yeah, I mean, it
These
was a time for healing, right?
it needed to be a time for healing. I mean, like we said previously, it was just entire families were ripped apart.
Yeah.
These gatherings were vital in helping the nation come to terms with the trauma of the war and the staggering loss of life.
In 1866, Women's organizations in the South, particularly in places like Charleston, South Carolina, and Columbus, Mississippi, began to formally observe these ceremonies, and soon similar practices spread across the North.
These events were seen as important not only for commemorating the lives lost, but also creating a lasting legacy of remembrance that transcended the divisions of the war.
As these local memorials continued to grow in importance and in scale, the idea of a National Day of Remembrance began to take shape.
In 1868, General John A. Logan, a Union veteran and the leader of the Grand Army of the Republic, an organization of Union veterans, officially called for a day of remembrance and decoration of soldiers' graves, choosing May 30th for this purpose.
This formalized the widespread tradition of decorating the graves of fallen soldiers, which eventually became Decoration Day, the precursor to what we know today as Memorial Day.
Thus, the Civil War not only shaped the nation's history, but also played a pivotal role in the creation of Memorial Day, turning the grassroots effort to honor the dead into a national day of remembrance for all soldiers who had died in service to the United States.
Originally known as Decoration Day, Memorial Day was established in the aftermath of the Civil War to honor Union soldiers who had died during the conflict.
However, the scope and meaning of the holiday began to shift following World War I, a global conflict that dramatically increased the number of American military casualties and expanded the public's awareness of the sacrifices made by service members beyond the Civil War.
As the United States became more involved in military engagements, first WW1, then WW2, and later the Korean and Vietnam Wars, the public sentiment around Decoration Day began to evolve.
Communities and veterans organizations began to naturally extend the observance to include the fallen from all wars, recognizing that the ultimate sacrifice made in service to the nation was not limited to any one conflict.
This broader acknowledgement gave rise to the use of the term Memorial Day, which began appearing informally in the early 20th century as people used it interchangeably with Decoration Day.
By the mid 20th century, Memorial Day had become the widely accepted name for the holiday.
This new name reflected the more inclusive commemoration of all U.S. military personnel who died in active duty, regardless of when or where they served.
The shift was solidified in 1967 when the U.S. government officially recognized Memorial Day as the holiday's name, replacing Decoration Day in federal usage.
Further changes came with the Uniform Monday Holiday Act, passed by Congress in 1968. This act aimed to create more 3-day weekends for federal employees by moving certain holidays to certain Mondays.
As a result, Memorial Day was moved from its traditional date of May 30th to the last Monday in May, beginning in 1971 when it was also declared a federal holiday.
The evolution of Memorial Day marks a transformation from a post Civil War tradition into a national day of collective mourning and gratitude, honoring the memory of all who gave their lives while serving in the U.S. Armed Forces.
Today, Memorial Day is marked by ceremonies at national cemeteries, including the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier at Arlington National Cemetery, accompanied by the National Moment of Remembrance at 3 p.m., during which Americans pause for a moment of silence.
Memorial Day also signals the unofficial start of summer in the U.S., with many families holding barbecues and picnics, though the holiday remains primarily a time for solemn reflection on the sacrifices of those who have served and died.
Here are some international Memorial Days similar to Memorial Day in the United States.
Remembrance Day in Canada and United Kingdom. This is observed on November 11th to mark the end of WW1 Armistice Day.
A time to reflect on the sacrifices made by soldiers who died in conflict, common symbols include poppies and moments of silence.
Anzac Day, Australia and New Zealand hold this day on April 25th, commemorating the first major military action of WW1 involving Anzac troops.
Honors all Australians and New Zealanders who died in military service.
This includes dawn services, parades, and moments of national reflection.
Remembrance Sunday in the United Kingdom takes place on the Sunday closest to November 11th.
A solemn day to remember British and Commonwealth service members who have died in conflict.
Marked by national ceremonies, especially in the cenotaph in London and wearing of red poppies.
South Korea Memorial Day, observed on June 6th to honor those who died while serving in the South Korean military.
1 minute silence is held at 10 a.m. nationwide.
Includes official ceremonies, flag lowering, and visits to national cemeteries.
In Israel, Yom HaZikaron, held on the 4th of Iyar, Hebrew calendar, usually in April or May.
Commemorates fallen soldiers and victims of terrorism. National mourning includes sirens, moments of silence, and public ceremonies.
In Russia, they have Victory Day, celebrated on May 9th, marking the defeat of Nazi Germany in 1945.
Honors the millions of Soviet soldiers who died during WW2.
Features military parades, especially in Moscow, and public remembrance.
The Netherlands Doden Herdenking, observed on May 4th, known as Remembrance of the Dead.
Honors civilians and soldiers who have died in wars and peacekeeping missions since World War II.
Includes a 2 minute silence at 8 p.m., wreath laying, and national broadcast.
This Memorial Day, take a quiet moment to honor the men and women who gave their lives in service, not only for their country, but for the ideals they believed were worth dying for freedom, duty, and the hope of a better future for generations to come.
And we're not going to have an ending for this episode. Instead, we will offer a moment of silence for the fallen.
Thank you from both of us.